Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Shabbat. We are up to Perik Vav Mishnah Dalid. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev Neliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden. Amen. The Mishnah begins Lo Yetzeh Ish Lo Besaif V'lo Bekeshet V'lo Bateris V'lo Ba'ala V'lo Baromach. A man may not go outside on Shabbat wearing a sword, a bow, a shield, a club, or a spear. Vim yatsa hayav hatat, and if he did go out to a public domain wearing any of these things, he is liable to bring a chatat offering. And the Mefarshim explain, as the Mishnah will go on and explain, these items are not viewed as jewelry or clothes, rather they're considered burdens. So even if one does not carry them in his hand but wears them in his belt or on his shoulder, he is liable because this is the normal way of carrying them. The Mishnah continues, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, but Rabbi Eliezer disagrees and he says, Tachshitin hen lo. If a man went out to a public domain wearing these things, he is not liable because these things are like jewelry for a man. Now, the Rav explains, and Mefarshim bring down, this is stated in a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 45, pasuk 4, tighten your sword upon your thigh, Almighty One, it is your majesty and your splendor, as the Gemara brings down, in Masechet Shabbat, page 63a. Now, Rabbi Eliezer agrees that under rabbinic law, a man may not wear these things on Shabbat because they make him look like he's going to fight a battle, like learned in Mishnah 2, but he disagrees to the point that you're not chayav hatat if you go out with them. Now, v'chachamim omrim, the sages whose opinion was cited by the first Tana, they respond to Rabbi Eliezer's argument. V'chachamim omrim, but the sages said, Enan ela lignai. The reason the sages said that if he went out wearing these is liable is because these things are nothing but a disgrace for a man. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Sefer Yeshaya, chapter 2, pasuk 4, V'chitutu charvotam leitim v'chanitotehem lemazmerot lo yisa goy and goy cherev v'lo yimedu od milchama. They shall beat their swords into spades and their spears into shears. One nation will not lift up a sword against another nation, and they will learn war no more. Meaning this pasuk shows that weapons are undesirable items, and so they cannot be considered jewelry. And the Mefarshim explain, if they were considered jewelry, they would not be beaten into tools in the future. Therefore, we must view them as objects that are being carried and not as jewelry that is being worn. And therefore, if a man wears them in a public domain, the sages say he is liable to bring a korban chatat. The Mishnah discusses now two items that are worn by women. Pirit teorah, a garter that women wear to hold up their stockings, is tahor, meaning it cannot become tameh. Now the Mefarshim explain an item of clothing cannot become tameh unless it directly benefits the person wearing it, like we'll see in Mishnah Kelim, chapter 12, Mishnah 1. The benefit provided by a garter is not direct because it serves only as an accessory to the stockings to keep them from falling down, therefore it cannot become tameh. The yotzin bah b'Shabbat, and they may go outside wearing it on Shabbat because it is considered an item of clothing. And the Mefarshim explain it is regarded as clothing because it keeps her stockings in place. There's no concern that she will remove it to show a friend, since her stockings would slip and her legs would show. Kivalim tmein, however, chains that are used to connect garters are tameh, meaning they can become tameh. And the Rav explains it was the practice for a girl to connect her garters with a golden chain. The purpose of the chain was to prevent her from taking large strides that might damage her hymen. Since these chains directly benefit those who wear them by protecting a part of the body, they can become tameh. Ve'en yotzin bahen b'Shabbat, and they may not go outside wearing them on Shabbat because they might remove them to show a friend. And the Rav explains a girl could remove the chain without disturbing her garters or stockings. The rabbis therefore prohibited wearing these chains on Shabbat because as they were made of gold, she might show them to a friend and then carry them in the Reshut Arabim in the public domain. And that is on the botai of Mishnah Dalid. The rest of the chapter now lists various things that a person is allowed to wear outside on Shabbat. We begin now with Mishnah Hey. Yotza isha bechutei se'ar ben mishelah, ben mishel havertah, ben mishel bema. A woman may go outside into a public domain with strings braided into her hair that are made out of detached hairs, which the Rav explains. A woman would take several detached hairs and wind them together into strings that she would then braid into her hair for decoration. even when these strings are braided tightly into her hair, they do not prevent water from reaching it, and she therefore does not have to loosen them for immersion in a mikveh, and therefore there's no concern that she might remove them and carry them on Shabbat, like there is in the case of strings of wool and linen that we spoke about in Mishnah 1. Now the Mishnah says she may go outside regardless of whether the hairs are from her own hair, her friend's hair, or an animal's hair. Now the Rav explains, even strings that are made from another woman's hair, which she might find repulsive and wish to remove, are permitted. And even strings made from an animal's hair, which are noticeable and so people might tease her for wearing them, are permitted. Because since she braided these strings into her hair, the rabbis were not concerned that she might remove them for any of these reasons. Ubatotefet, ubasan butin, bisman shen tifurin, she may go outside into a public domain with a headband or head bangles if they're sewn to her hat. And the Mefarshim explained, to remove these items to show to a friend, she would have to take off her hat since they're attached to it and uncover her hair. Since a woman would never uncover her hair in public, she is allowed to wear them. Bakavul uvpe'ah nochrit lechatzer, she may go out into a courtyard with a forehead pad or a wig. Now the Mefarshim explain, the rabbis allowed a woman to wear a forehead pad or a wig in a courtyard so that she would look attractive to her husband, like the Rav explained in Mishnah 1. However, since she might take these things off and carry them, the rabbis did not allow her to wear them in a public domain where carrying is a biblical transgression. A woman might take off her forehead pad to show it to a friend, and she might take off her wig if people tease her for wearing it, as the Tosfot explained on page 57b, meaning she might slip the wig off her head while leaving her hat on. The rabbis allowed wearing these two items in a courtyard despite the fact that she might remove them, but all other things that she might remove and carry are prohibited even in a courtyard and certainly in a Reshut HaRabim, a public domain. B'moch shebe'oznah, she may go outside into a public domain with a cloth in her ear to absorb its discharge. Uvmoch shebasandalah, a lining in her sandal to protect her foot. Uvmoch she'itkina lenidata, and a padding that she had prepared to absorb the blood of her menstruation, which the Rav explains, a woman places absorbent padding between her legs to prevent blood from dripping onto her skin, as Tosfot writes in Masechet Shabbat, page 64b. Since it protects her body, it is considered clothing, as the Mishnah Berurah writes in chapter 301, Sif Katan 51. But Pilpel, the Mishnah says she may also go out with a peppercorn in her mouth to overcome bad breath. But Pilpel, Uvgargir melach, a lump of salt in her mouth to heal tooth disease. Uvchol davar shititen letoch pia ubelvad shelo titen lechatchila b'Shabbat, and anything else that she puts in her mouth for these reasons, provided that she does not put it in her mouth on Shabbat in the first place. And the Mefarshim explained, for example, she may go out with ginger or cinnamon in her mouth to overcome bad breath, as the Gemara says on page 65a in Masechet Shabbat, right, when the Mishnah says, ubechol davar shititen letoch pia, anything else that she puts in her mouth. So like we said, for example, to go out with ginger or cinnamon. Now, since these things are kept in one's mouth for personal well-being, they are not considered a carried item, but are like clothes or jewelry, which may be worn on Shabbat, like we see in Orach Chaim, chapter 301, Halakha 22. Now, the Mishnah says, provided that she does not put it in her mouth on Shabbat in the first place, which the Mefarshim explains, she is allowed to go out with these things in her mouth only if they were placed there before Shabbat began. If she puts them in her mouth on Shabbat, someone who does not know that she has bad breath or a tooth disease might suspect her of using this method to carry them somewhere on Shabbat, as Tosfot write on page 64b. Vim nafal lo tachazir. Moreover, even if it was already in her mouth before Shabbat began and then fell out on Shabbat, she may not put it back in, and it's prohibited for the same reason that she may not put it there in the first place. A person might think she's doing it to carry. Shen totevet v'shen shel zahav Rabbi matir v'chachamim osrim. Rabbi permits her to go out with a false tooth and with gold plating on a discolored tooth, but the sages forbid these items. And the Mefarshim explain, according to Rabbi, we are not concerned that one might remove a false tooth from one's mouth or gold plating from a discolored tooth, because the blemish would therefore be exposed. But the sages hold that since the false tooth and the gold plating are noticeable, they might be a source of embarrassment, causing one to remove them and carry them, even though that would reveal the blemish. They therefore prohibit going out with them on Shabbat. And the Rav tells us, V'alacha ki chachamim, the halacha follows the opinion of these sages. And that is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.